Hello and welcome to the session on error correction by Juliia Savenko. In this session, we'll be talking about how to correct errors and provide feedback. And this is the logical continuation of the session on assessment. Please, Juliia.
Okay, today we are going to discuss error correction and providing feedback, and it is the second part of assessment, basically. So there are different approaches to the nature and function of feedback. And well, what is feedback? We discussed it before. It's information given to the learner about his performance of a learning task. And there are different forms like yes, right, a grade of 70%, or price type row. It's also your feedback. So we can use different forms of feedback. And usually there are two distinguishable components of feedback. There are assessment and correction. And just to remind you that feedback consists of three parts. Usually it's something positive. You speak about their progress and you assess their progress. And then the second part is area of improvement. This is where we will use error correction and but not criticism. And then again, positive feedback, something positive about your learner's achievement. So, and assessment, it's part of error correction, and then learners informed about how well or badly he performed, and correction specific information is provided on aspects of learner's performance. Correction should include information on what the learner did right, as well as wrong, and why. So, what are mistakes? Well, learners make mistakes or errors, and it's okay, it's natural, and this is how they can see their progress if they understand their mistakes and errors, and how they can develop themselves. We often learn by trial and error in many areas of our life. And dealing with errors, we seek for correction techniques to raise the learner's own awareness about the language, rather than giving the correct form on a plate. So you give them opportunity to discover to find their mistakes, to understand them, not just to give them correct answers. There are different types of mistakes. Can be slips of the tongue, mistakes which students can correct themselves. Errors are mistakes which they cannot correct themselves, and sometimes they do not understand them. At times the pupil tries to say something but does not yet know the correct way of saying it. It also often happens when they try to express their thoughts, for example. And the main causes of errors is the influence of their mother tongue, of L1, and also playing with language or experimenting with language. For example, they can't or he goes when they don't understand that they need to use irregular verbs. When to correct spoken English? It all depends, because we need to understand if we focus on accuracy or fluency. If our lesson is focused on accuracy, so it can be corrected on the spot, or you can also use delayed error correction after the activity. But if your focus is fluency, you can do it later or brief, or do not correct at all. Because for you, for example, it's more important that learners finally can express their thoughts and use new vocabulary, expressing their thoughts. Well, techniques of oral correction directly provided by the teacher to be elicited learners. So correction may or may not include clarification, reproduction of the correct form. For example, they say, I go to the park, and you say, oh, you went to the park. The correction should always be encouragement and tactful. So you will not demotivate your learners, but encourage them to fill these gaps in their knowledge. Ideas for indicating. So you can tell the pupils that there is an error Use facial expression of surprise or raised eyebrows so they understand that something is wrong. Use a gesture combined with facial expression. Use finger correction, and usually it's about word order or wrong usage of grammar. For example, she not like ice cream. It will be she does not like ice cream. So what is here? It's does. And repeat the sentence up to the error and echo the sentence with changed intonation so they understand that something was wrong there. You can ask question, or you can ask one word question and draw a timeline on the board so they understand grammar. Write the problem sentence on the board for discussion. It can be used also during delayed error correction. If you monitor your learners' discussion in groups, for example, and you hear that they make the same mistake all the time, you can write few sentences with the most common mistakes on the board and offer them to correct these mistakes. It can be done in groups or individually, and then they see their problems and they understand that it's usually they understand that it was their mistake. And you can use the humor in the error. Oh no, explore the humor in the error. Written work of various types. So correcting written work of various types. It can be composition, assignment on grammar, vocabulary, answers to comprehension questions, tests, etc. Well, traditional way, all mistakes are underlined with a red pen. The general tone of teacher's comments is negative. And there exist options for getting the learners to look at each other's work and evaluate its peer correction. And however, many learners will expect that the teacher to look at their work, and they may feel let down if only evaluated by other students. Yeah, so basically it motivates them to be more accurate when they know that teachers will check their work. So variation on traditional teacher marking by scrivener. We need to use green pen. We should discuss the making criteria with the learners so they understand right correct answers. Use correction codes, letters, I will show them later. Underline all errors of one type. Write a letter in reply and write nothing. Discuss the work with individual learners. Sometimes it can be also useful just to discuss it. So only write a comment on the meaning and message of the piece. Create a composite essay using good bits and problematic bits from a number of students' work, photocopy it and head it out for students to discuss and correct. Use errors forms a number of different students and give a dictation at the end based on sentences from learners' work so they can see their progress. Well, evaluating written work, what we usually correct is orthography, punctuation, spelling, layout, and language. And we can use following correction codes. They can help you to do it fast, and your learners will understand what the mistake is. And the most common resource of gathering information for assessment and tests. Speaking about error correction, there are some rules, something that we shouldn't do, mustn't do. Don't overcorrect, don't correct every single mistakes of your learners. Keep error correction relevant and avoid interrupting your students when they speak, or they make an effort to speak fluently, because it can demotivate them and discourage them. and you will never hear them speaking anymore. And never scold your students, become loud or show your impatience. There are no silly mistakes, because mistakes help us to learn new things. And something that we should do is to be sensitive to your students, and ask your students at the beginning of your course which kind of error correction they prefer. Some students like to be corrected because they can see their progress, and some students do not like to be corrected, or it can be individual error correction. Be kind and patient in the way you correct your learners. Give your students a chance to self-correct. Sometimes they need just more time. Use visual cues. Sometimes raising your eyebrow can help, using your gestures can help, and so they can correct themselves. And establish your own gestures for common mistakes in tenses or vocabulary or sentence structures. That's it. I hope it will help teachers to correct their learners' mistakes properly and not to demotivate their learners.
It will definitely help. Yeah, thank you so much for the session. Bye-bye.